When you've had a long week and want to mix it up with something new and interesting to eat, try Blue Apron's 2 or 4 serving menu plans with those hard-to-find ingredients sure to spice up your weekend. With 60-plus options each week, you can choose from an ever-changing mix of high-quality meat, fish, vegetarian, WW recommended, and wellness offerings. Order now and get $110 off across your first 5 orders when you visit blueapron.com/unique.
Hello everyone, how are you this evening? Welcome to the Direct-to-Video Connoisseur podcast. As always, I'm joined by Jamie. Jamie, how are you tonight?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. Actually, Jen has been sick the past week. Yeah, she has a sinus infection, and I'm worried that I might get it too. I'm starting to feel a little bit now, so I'm kind of like Peter Griffin talking about the woman at work who cannot get sick right now. I'm like, I cannot get sick right now. I cannot get sick right now. And so that's where that's what I'm doing. But we're crossing our fingers, hoping everything is well. But we'll see what happens there. If I sound a little nasally tonight, though, that's what that is.
Oh, okay. I just thought it would be, regular.
Yeah, it's 9 times out of 10, it's the Coke. It's all the Coke that I ingest before, to get myself really, ready to go. Like, yeah. I try to get like Kelly when she was dating Colin the Artist. I try to get that level of high where I'm just giving people gifts at random.
Well, sign me up.
Yeah, that's how I do every show. Is either high on cocaine or with a potential sinus infection.
I think as long as you snorted off the ass of a whore, then it's acceptable.
Since I got married, we don't do that as much. Sometimes Jen will find somebody and we'll see what we can do. But for the most part, yes. Now, before we get into the movie, I wanted to get a couple administrative things out of the way. First, I found out that since I put our blog in the explicit category, I guess if you follow the link to the TalkShoe page to look at the archives, it tells you need to create an account. So what I'm going to try to do is get all of our episodes archived onto a page on my blog that we can all link to, just to make it easier, because I just realized Jen's friend has a podcast on The Wire, and she was trying to trade links between her friend's podcast and mine, and I was like, oh, well, just send her the TalkShoe page. That's where all of our episodes are. And she's like, well, what is this? It's telling me I need an account. And I was like, oh, that's right. We put the explicit thing on there. You have to prove you're 18.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, because I love those. Whenever you see that online, it's like, are you 18? Yes. Well, that was hard.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry that I'm 12 and have an email account that with 15 numbers in it and some silly name that I can use to just say I'm 18 and get on there, and also say I'm 21 and go to every beer website. Yeah.
You're very trusting the internet.
Yes. But so that's one thing that I am going to try to take care of in the next few days. But as always, the most recent episodes, if you can't get to the TalkShoe page, the most recent ones you can always get both on my blog. I have the RSS feed. Is that too many S's again? RSS feed. But you can always.
It's funny when you said that. I was trying to count in my head.
Yes.
Did you say RSSSS?
Yeah, I think there at least one extra there. Yeah. So we always have that, and then what What was I going to say? Oh, and also iTunes. But see, Jen's friend doesn't do iTunes. That's where the problem was coming in for her. But there's always the update on iTunes, and there, I don't think they care how old you are.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think the explicit thing for them is just so they can tell people's parents, like, hey, we told you. Exactly. Yeah.
I told you it was explicit, mofo.
Exactly. They're talking about doing
coke.
What
are you complaining about?
Yes, exactly. You're upset that your kid is listening to two people talk about doing coke off of a hooker's ass? There's a big red E that tells you that could possibly happen. We're sorry. Oh, man. Now, speaking of hookers, we have a movie tonight that would we say that the hooker was the hero, or was it more the detective in Nicolas Cage?
I think it was Nicolas Cage. I mean, there's, she was ready to cash out at one point.
Yeah.
And, she didn't know if she could even face him enough to what do you call it when you're in court and you are testify.
Testify.
She didn't know if she could even testify against him. And Cage is the one who was pushing and pushing and pushing. So I'd say he is the hero.
Yeah. So the film we looked at tonight, and I totally forgot to go on Twitter and Facebook and mention what we were doing tonight, what film we're covering. But we're looking at The Frozen Ground, starring Nicolas Cage, John Cusack as Alaskan serial killer Robert Hansen, who I guess died just last year. I think it was August of 20. Oh, actually, he just died a month ago. Robert Hansen. I just see that on Wikipedia.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that that's what this movie was about.
Me
I had
neither.
no idea. And then it all details started to pop up, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of interesting when because I had no idea that it was based on anything real. And then when I started watching it, a little ding 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 started going off, and because I'm a really morbid person, and I watch a lot of the Murder Channel, which is what I call investigation discovery.
Exactly. Yes.
And my DVR is just eat up with the Murder Channel, and so and I'm not obsessed with serial killers. Like, I don't write them letters, and I don't collect murderabilia, but I am infinitely fascinated by the dark side of human nature. So I was familiar, and so that was kind of exciting.
Yeah, I was I think even less familiar. I actually as familiar as I was with this story, it came through one of those murder investigation things from a long time before that channel existed. When those shows that are on there now were new on like A&E or Discovery Channel or something. And I remember them doing a show about him, but at the time I just kind of it was a very short episode. I think it was like 22 minutes or something. So like this whole area with Vanessa Hudgens' character as the prostitute that he tried to kill who escaped, it was covered very quickly what happened, and I think they even got some of the facts wrong. And so I going into this, I thought it was going to be loosely based on that, but be something that's completely out there. Like what is that one in Australia? Was it Wolf Creek or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, that was like loosely based on this guy who was killing hitchhikers, but so
yeah, it was
loosely.
Just sort of like that one was just basically a bunch of people in Australia disappear in the outback.
Yeah.
Every year, and this might be.
Yeah.
What could be going on, maybe.
Well, because there was a real serial killer in Australia. What he was doing was because there were kids that would travel to Australia and hitchhike everywhere, and he was killing them. And actually, he was killing them in a way similar to the way Robert Hansen killed people, without doing the whole. I don't think he was doing the rape thing, but I think he was, or keeping them captive. But he was taking them out to the woods and shooting them with a gun. And this English guy escaped. But it was another one of those murder investigation TV shows that I heard about that guy. And so when the Wolf Creek thing happened, I was like, when I saw the commercials, I was like, that's not the same case. But it was a huge deal in Australia because they don't have as many of that kind of thing wasn't as big as it is here in the United States, or as I don't know, say common. I don't know what the word is.
We have more sick bastards.
We
here.
do. We tend. I think it's. I was going to say I think it's our highway system. I guess in Alaska it's the prevalence of light aircraft that made made this serial killer
You
happen.
think that's what it was?
Yes. Well, they always talk about, especially in the middle of the country, there's so many interstates that crisscross that serial killers, yeah, crisscross. Yeah, serial killers can work very easily in those areas, and nobody really knows what happens with them. But this one here, Robert Hansen, he was using light aircraft.
I thought maybe it was because the moose, wander into town and
What did you before? I guess before we get into what we thought of the film, what did you think of the moose scene? That was interesting.
I liked it.
Yeah.
And it sort of it made my thoughts go off in a whole other direction, like, oh, poor moose.
Right.
I hope nothing bad happens to him. I don't know. I spent a good deal of minutes afterward thinking about that moose.
Yeah.
But and how cool it would be to just be standing there and suddenly a moose comes walking down the street and he's not giving a shit. I mean,
No.
he wasn't interested in anything. He's just window shopping. I don't know. What was he?
Yeah, I mean, as a Mainer, I think I'm supposed to be an expert on moose because I think after the lobster, the moose is our state animal. But I've only actually encountered 2 moose in my lifetime, and neither of them were in a situation like that. And also, both times they were in New Hampshire. I never actually saw them.
It's kind of fucked up that you are known for your eating your state animal.
Yes, moose tastes good. It actually is very good.
I was talking about a lobster.
Oh, that too. Yes,
but
we.
I've never had moose.
We eat lobster. Yeah, I think moose might be. I don't know. See,
like
moose.
Elk, maybe.
Yeah, it does taste. It's like a gamier version of. It's like a. I don't know. It's like a more potent version of deer meat, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. But I
Yeah.
don't like deer meat.
No, then you wouldn't like moose at all.
I think venison is way gamey. I don't like
Yeah.
it at all.
Well,
And everyone's always like, oh, well, it just depends on how you cook it, and you just kind of cook. Oh, shut up! I've had it a lot of different ways. I live in
Yeah.
the fucking South.
Yeah.
And when we eat a lot of deer around here, and I've had it a ton of different ways, and I just don't like it. I don't
Yeah.
like frog's legs either. I think they taste like swamp.
I-
So
Yeah.
I don't even like duck. It's too greasy.
Ooh, I'm a huge
And it's
duck
all
fan.
dark, it's all dark meat, and I don't even like dark meat. I eat white meat.
I have to admit all 3 of those. Duck, frog's legs.
You know what? If we ever went out and had to split up who was eating what animals, we would never get into an argument.
No.
We would be just fine.
No, exactly.
I'm not going to be trying to kick your ass over some duck.
Over some duck. I know. Duck is, yeah, I am a fan. I'm not like crazy like Anthony Bourdain talking about how everything's fried in duck fat thing. I just, if duck is on the menu and I've got the money for it, I might get it.
Yeah, no.
That's it, Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. Like, you're talking about growing up in the South. I think, too, where I grew up in kind of a rural part of New England, my dad, he grew up in that mindset that hunting provides food. And my mom grew up in that suburban mindset that hunting is gross. And
Right.
I'm not going to eat that stuff. So my dad would, he hunts, he shoots the deer, and like the only person who would ever eat it is me because nobody else in the family my sister's brother, nobody really wanted it. So, and he'd be all disappointed because he's thinking he's like helping to provide for us for the winter. And
Aww.
yeah, and my mom's just like, I'm not touching that. So yeah, so yeah, that's it's that idea. But the moose, I thought, that scene. Obviously, I doubt that was based on real events. I don't think that really happened to her, that she saw a moose. But I think to see a moose in a movie, I think is always a positive.
It made me think of Northern Exposure.
Mm-hmm. I forgot about that show. That was a great one.
Yeah, I liked that show.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of this film overall, The Frozen Ground?
Well, I'll tell you. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Except for I had some issues with some of the directing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that a lot of times it was certain scenes were framed oddly,
Mm-hmm.
and the movement was a little bit difficult to see.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the shots were a little dark.
Yeah.
So it would, like when you'd have action moments, like whenever they were in the club,
Mm-hmm.
and or rather when they went to Clate's place at the end to try to find her. There was a lot of stuff going on and a lot of people moving around, but it was kind of difficult to keep up with who was doing what, because it was just difficult to see at times, and the framing was kind of odd in some places.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I always like seeing John Cusack play a bad guy. I think he's good at it. He most recently was in Oh, what's that piano movie with um Frodo? What
Oh, Elijah Wood. I haven't seen that one yet.
what is it called? I can't remember what it's even called.
Oh,
Grand Piano? No,
I know.
I don't remember. But anyway, it was really good.
I've been meaning to see that one. It's on Netflix too, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, and it's really good. And John Cusack played an excellent bad guy. I think he is good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I saw the two of them paired,
Yes.
I knew immediately that Nicolas Cage was going to be the good guy because Nicolas Cage is always the good guy.
Right.
And I was like, ooh, that means John Cusack's going to be the bad guy.
See-
This is going to be awesome.
See, I didn't make that conclusion right away, and it didn't even hit me until they started calling him Bob Hansen, and I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be so good. And I will say there were a couple of points where I was a little I thought John Cusack was a little too cool because John Cusack just kind of exudes a natural coolness that I thought was going to betray the character. And I actually even have in my notes, I had, is he believable in a question mark? And then when we get to that interrogation scene, especially, more than any scene where it's him against Nicolas Cage, he just seemed to have every mannerism down that just made him such a creep and such a bad guy and such a villain. Like the way he was blinking too much, his blink rate, the way he reacted, his stutter, he had it all so perfect. And Nicolas Cage was so good, like you said, as the good guy opposite him. That interrogation scene, I think, did it for me more than anything. My main complaint was 50 Cent's part. I thought it just added something to the film that didn't need to be there, and I don't know if because he was one of the producers that he had the part made for himself.
Possibly.
Yeah, what did you think about? Was that did that kind of take?
I didn't really. It wasn't that distracting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't know. I didn't think much of it at all, actually.
Yeah, I guess I felt like when we got near the end, I felt like I didn't need that whole thing where Vanessa Hudgens' character tries to leave town and then she meets up with 50 Cent and he's trying to take her to this guy to kill her or whatever for Bob Hansen. Because I don't think any of that happened in real life. I don't think any of that occurred. I think Bob Hansen just kind of the way that they described it on Wikipedia was the moment the interrogation happened, he started to sort of try to validate why he did the things he did, started to try to blame the women for him committing the crimes, and started to try to justify why he did what he did. Once he was sort of back,
total sense.
Yeah.
It fits with the profile of this kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Who, and I liked the part where when during the interrogation where Nicolas Cage said, basically hookers are beneath us.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, well, yeah, that's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he goes into well, don't you remember when you were young and women figured out what it was that you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and that you basically they had the control, and it's like, so now you have the control. And then it's a perfect description
Yeah.
of someone like that who maybe doesn't have control
Mm-hmm.
and takes any opportunity to seize it. But he was pretty creepy,
He was.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I don't know, he really nailed it in that I don't know, there was something about the scene where he had the girl captured where, yeah, you kind of were like, what is going to happen next? And it had that kind of, but you knew what was going to happen next, I guess, so it was really just a matter of how gruesome or how bad it was going to be. We knew it was going to happen. And so I think maybe he didn't have as much room to work there as he did in the interrogation scene, where it was really he could really be the full character. He could do all, and I don't know, it just seemed like, especially when, like you said, when he lost the power, because he was with Nicolas Cage and Nicolas Cage had the power, you really see the character break down, and he nailed that so perfectly.
One thing I was happy about too is with Nicolas Cage, we didn't really have any of those moments where he goes completely over the top.
Yes.
And he can do that.
Mm-hmm.
He can just go balls out, and
Yes.
to the point where it becomes comical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he restrained himself
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit. He was brooding, and he was determined, and but he had this heroic feel, but he didn't take it too far, and
Mm-hmm.
he never pulled me out of the scene, which he can do sometimes, just
Yeah.
because he's just like, "Wah!"
It,
um,
it felt like more like vintage, or like, I don't know, say vintage Nicolas Cage, but when we, I know obviously Leaving Las Vegas, he was that over the top, but it worked in that one. But when we think of Leaving Las Vegas, we think of this Nicolas Cage that everybody thought was going to be like the next generation, like that next, take over for De Niro and Pacino and those guys. That he was supposed to be that guy, or one of those guys. And of course, suddenly the Wicker Man happened, the Weatherman happened, Matchstick, whatever list you want to put on there.
I like Matchstick Men.
I'm not saying it was bad, but I'm saying it was like, I guess critically it got, it was not the Leaving Las Vegas, I guess, you know what I mean? Like he kind of, somehow he fell off.
Well, he did, and he sort of became a punchline.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And you have no. I think a lot of people just don't take him seriously because they fully expect him to go, Con Air.
Right.
On everything that he does. And what I really enjoy is like long time ago Nicolas Cage, like Valley Girl Nicolas Cage.
Oh yeah, Moonstruck.
I loved him back then. And what's the Lynch movie with the
Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart,
yes.
Which he was a little bit over the top in that, but that's a Lynch movie. It's supposed to be that way, but I enjoyed him back then. And then when he became this, when he got older and started doing these roles, it's just, there's an air of comedy about him, whether he intends it to be there or not sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you have like the memes floating around where his hair is a bird, people just don't often take him seriously. So it's like if you either love Nicolas Cage or he gets on your nerves. And I enjoy him. I don't ever have an issue with him, but sometimes he can be a little bit much, and it tends to pull me out. But I thought he was very restrained here, and I was appreciative of that because I think the role called for it, especially when you're talking about something real.
Yeah.
You want to have it portrayed with some sincerity and some, like, a little bit of seriousness, and I think he was able to do that well.
Oh, Beefy Beard talked about Raising Arizona. That was
Oh man, I love Raising Arizona.
Yeah, well, see, I think when you bring up Raising Arizona, you bring up Wild at Heart, you bring up some of those ones. I think this movie here, it felt like it was that period of time with both him and Cusack, where kind of like the early 2000s, where they were both a big deal in Hollywood. And this film, I don't know, for me, as I was watching it, I had to remind myself that it wasn't. It was direct to video for us in the United States. In Europe, it was it was screened there on the big screen. But it was essentially a direct to video movie for us, and I had to remind myself that that's not what this wasn't, something from 99 or 2000 that would have been given the full backing of the studios. Obviously Vanessa Hudgens would have been too young to play her part. Maybe Juliette Lewis would have played that role, or I'm not sure. But you know what I mean, though. This movie, the two of them really had what we loved of them. And I'm not saying they either have necessarily, we can't expect them to do that now, but it just felt like that time. Like this felt like this. It would have maybe been a big screen movie that we might have said like, I don't know if I want to go see that in the theater. It's a bit, or we all maybe would have gone to see it just because, it's like we're going to the movies on a Friday night and we've already seen the other movies. Let's go see the new Nicolas Cage, John Cusack film,
Yeah, I think that's where they tend to fall sometimes. It's like, oh, they're in a movie I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not, these aren't, they're not the kind of movies that you're going to see trailers for and get bombarded with it, and they could even slip out. It's one of those movies that where you're standing in line to see something and you're like, oh, well, look at that. I didn't know that was out. I didn't even know what is that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then once you've seen everything else, maybe you'll go see it,
right.
But probably not.
Yeah, and there were a lot of those in the theater in the back then, because I think the theater was a bigger deal. Now it's like Avengers takes up 5 screens, or whatever, the new Spider-Man takes up 5 screens, and so you can't you don't have as much variety at the movie theater as you did back then, where a movie like this would have probably, because of the two names, of course, Nicolas Cage and John Cusack, the names would have been enough to get it backing from a major Hollywood theater. I don't know if the runtime would have been beefed up. They seem to like 2-hour jobs in the movie theater, like Shooter. But
well, and then they slip in and out so quickly too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unless you've got a movie that's really making tons of money, you can miss it.
Yeah.
You know, you can miss it in a week if
It,
if you're not careful.
it,
And so even if you know a movie's coming out, sometimes you'll miss your opportunity to see it in the theater because it comes and goes without you ever even realizing it.
yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, and so I think that's, it's almost like this is the better way to do it nowadays. I mean, I don't know how much of a big screen experience this would have added for us anyway to see it on the big screen, but you get. I think nowadays it's almost like you almost have to do Netflix or DVD or whatever to see a movie, because, like you said, they can be in and out so quickly that if you're not on it, something comes up the week that like for me, I never got around to seeing Expendables 3, and I really intended to see that one in the theater. And Jen and I had a day off recently. I looked it up and I was like, oh, it's only playing on 2 screens that are way outside the city that I can't go see it on.
Yeah, I mean, and it's expensive now too. So you
Mhm.
can't, I mean, years ago, I'd go to the movies every weekend.
Mhm.
You know, I now I have to save my movie going money for something I really want to see.
Yeah.
And um particularly I enjoy watching horror films in the theater. That's one of my favorite things to do. So I will generally wait for a horror film to come out and then throw my money at that. So I probably wouldn't have seen it in that. Not probably. I wouldn't have seen it in the theater even if it had been here.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you're probably right about that too. And the other thing about the horror film you say, the one thing I always loved about the horror film in the theater is it adds to it. Like, you almost feel like you can't escape when you're in the theater, whereas like when you watch the horror film at home, I don't know, if I feel like I get the freedom, the luxury of turning it off or pausing it or something, whereas like I know I can walk out of the theater, but I feel like I can't, if that makes sense.
No, I get that. Like I don't even want to get up and go to the bathroom
No.
if I'm in a theater. I paid for that seat. I'm going to sit there the whole time.
Yes.
And there's the whole, as long as some asshole isn't on their cell phone texting or whatever,
Yes.
lighting up their screen every 2 seconds,
Hmm.
and as long as they're not talking and getting on my nerves, things that will make me throw things at them,
Yes.
as I am wont to do, I can allow myself to be more immersed
Hmm.
when I'm at a theater. At home, there are a lot of other distractions. At home,
Yes.
I have my phone in my lap. I
Yeah.
have, my laptop open or my tablet or whatever. I've got, the lights are on or the kids are running around. My kids, I mean, cats are running around
Yes, that's how we
causing
call our kids too.
trouble.
Yes.
You know, the the it's there are all these distractions, all these other things going on. When I'm sitting in a theater, I am completely immersed,
Hmm.
and that's the way I enjoy it. That's the way I love to watch horror films. And like I just recently went to see As Above, So Below,
Hmm.
which I guess is the last thing I saw in the theater, and I think it was enhanced by that
Yeah.
because the entire film takes place in there. Well, the majority of the film takes place in the French catacombs,
Hmm.
so you are isolated and confined, and in the theater in the dark with with the surround sound and everything, it heightened everything
Right.
and enhanced the entire experience. I wouldn't have had that same experience if I had waited to watch it at home
Yeah.
because of all the other stuff like I mentioned before. So
Hmm.
I really, for me, that's the way I like to enjoy horror, and I don't that's my favorite thing to do. So whenever I see that something is coming out, even if I'm not completely sold that I'm going to love it,
Hmm.
I will, because to be honest, before I saw As Above, So Below, when I saw the trailers, I was not that impressed. I
Yeah,
was
I was
just
gonna
like, eh,
say.
okay, whatever. But
Yeah,
I saw it and I really liked it. I mean, a lot.
yeah, I was gonna say Jen and I saw a trailer for that and we are like, yeah, I don't know, but you gave it an endorsement. I think that. But see, now I'm wondering, 'cause one movie I can think of that really had that effect on me was the third Star Wars, the Revenge of the Sith or whatever it was.
Hmm.
Um, I saw that one in the theater and I was like, oh, that movie was awesome. That was great. And my friends were kind of like, really? You liked it that much? And then we watched it on DVD and I was like, yeah, really, I guess you're right. Why did I like it that much?
Well, I guess with that particular film, I have sort of the same experience as far as I was really into it. But I went to a midnight showing.
So did I, yeah.
And so you have, people in costume.
Mhm.
I was sitting next to Han Solo.
Right.
You've got people in costume, people really into it.
Hmm.
And I mean, it was packed.
Yeah.
The only thing that The one thing though that sticks out to me about watching that film in the theater was how hot it was, because there were so many people packed into the theater that you just
Oh.
couldn't breathe. It was so stifling.
Mhm.
And that was distracting, and I was uncomfortable, and I was moving around a lot. And uh but it was still, the whole experience was good. But that did have a negative experience, a negative effect on me when I saw the Land of the Dead premiere in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
That theater was packed, and it was it was in this really old awesome theater in downtown Pittsburgh, and everyone was there. It was a wonderful experience. But then as soon as the movie started and everyone was quiet and in their seats and you're all packed in like sardines, I started to get really hot and uncomfortable, and I was moving around, and the sound wasn't all that great because this theater is really old. And it just I I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it at all. And I'm like, oh God, I don't like this movie. But then when I got it home and I watched it on DVD, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is much better than I
Yes.
thought it was initially.
Mhm.
So I guess it can go one way or the other. It can, you never really know if it's going to be a good thing or not. But I'd rather chance it. And
Yeah. You never
with
know.
this particular one, I don't think it would have mattered. There's really nothing about it that screams for a theatrical viewing.
No, no, this one definitely, I think we're good with it as a direct to video. I think the thing for me was I felt like while I was watching it I had to remind myself that it wasn't made 10 years ago for the big screen, that it was this is or this is where movies are for Nicolas Cage and John Cusack. This is in a sense it's kind of where they are for us now too, like is I Johnny Sullivan, a screenwriter, he wrote film Recoil that I reviewed, and I chat with him on Twitter here and there. He posted an article or an interview that John Cusack did, where he said pretty much that Hollywood has become a mess. I think he referred to it as a whorehouse or something like that. That they're pimping out, especially young girls, because he said like once you get past your mid-20s, you're considered old now by the new Hollywood standards. But he said the only way he can do the films that he wants to do, the characters like Bob Hansen that he wants to do, is in independent films or low budget flicks or ones that go direct to video. That he can't do the movies he wants to do anymore because Hollywood's kind of decided that he needs to go to the side, or that they don't want to give him those roles.
Interesting.
Mm. I know, and he was saying, for him, like as a guy, that guys, of course, age better in Hollywood than women
Oh,
do.
well, yeah. I mean, older men are considered distinguished.
Right.
Look at Sean Connery.
Mhm.
Um, but older women, with the exception of Helen Mirren,
Mhm.
are old.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
And then you end up doing bit parts in horror films when
Yeah.
some director wants to drag you back.
Yeah.
Like Rob Zombie or Ty West, or someone who's like, hey, no one's seen you in a while. Mickle
Right.
says
Yes.
that a lot. So, or even, I mean, if you're lucky, like if you were quirky enough, you might end up in a Tarantino film. But
Well, I was gonna say too, you could
even
play the
that's
spunky
usually
grandma.
men.
I was gonna say too, the other thing you could do is play the spunky grandma. I know Jane
Oh yeah,
Fonda has cornered that market.
it's true.
Betty White.
Betty White, yeah.
Yes. Helen Mirren, love that silver
If I had a
fox.
cock, this is where I'd tell you to suck it.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, that seems to be the thing. That I mean, one thing I was thinking about was Vanessa Hudgens in this role here. I kind of feel like on the one hand, while we talk about like Hollywood's kind of like you're old if you're past your mid-20s or whatever. I also kind of feel like someone like a Vanessa Hudgens, had she come out, had Hollywood Musical come out in the 90s, I don't think she would have had the career that she's had, where she's able to do films like this one. I don't know if I want to count Sucker Punch with that, but maybe there's another one she did where she plays an illegitimate daughter of, I think it was a rich Jason Bateman. But she gets to do roles that are kind of considered more serious acting roles, whereas I think you look at Elizabeth Berkley, you look at Shannon Doherty, you look at also real teen stars. It's like once they came of age, it was almost like unless you were Drew Barrymore and you had a drug problem and you were able to do Poison Ivy, we didn't really, it was like we decided, no, you can't act. We don't want you. Nobody wants you. And see, I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, Shannon Doherty was well, she got that whole bitchy
Right.
reputation, and then she's doing sci-fi movies
Mm-hmm.
and asylum movies, and it's just, and she, oh bless her,
I know.
she's not looking good. I don't know,
I
I don't know what
know.
happened with that,
Mm.
but in Elizabeth Berkley, she went from Showgirls to Lifetime movies.
Yeah.
And if you watch her in Lifetime, and I know you guys do,
Mm-hmm.
um, but if you watch her in Lifetime movies, it's just like, oh man. I mean, like when she grew up, she just got all crazy eyed, and
Yeah.
she can't really act either.
Now,
I'm like, what the hell happened?
I know. I saw her on when I was out in San Diego in '01. My buddy and I went up to L.A. and we got free tickets to go to the Craig Kilborn show. I don't know if you've ever been to L.A. where you get the guys shilling tickets on around Mann's Chinese Theater and Hollywood Boulevard. Um, but this guy comes up to us. You guys want to see Craig Kilborn? Yeah, okay, we'll go to the Craig Kilborn show. So we were in the audience, and she was there for doing publicity for Curse of the Jade Scorpion, and she was very Miss like thespian, talking about working with Woody Allen and all of this stuff, And we know now that Woody Allen just tries to get as many young women in skimpy outfits in his movies as he can. The list is long, and I'm not saying that Elizabeth Berkley shouldn't consider herself an actress because she did Jade Score, but I just like the whole thing just smacked as like very like I don't know. We were just sitting there like, are we listening to this? Are we listening to this conversation?
She's not much of an actress, though.
No, but
She's really not.
yeah, and it was just like the craft, and I don't
But
know.
like the same thing happened with Molly Ringwald.
Mm-hmm.
Even I mean, she was huge,
Yes.
huge as a teen. And she got older. She got a little crazy-eyed too. I mean, like she does this weird thing with her eyes, where they're like,
It's like
when she's talking. And
yeah.
the only way she ever gets roles now is because it's in that particular film. It might be kitschy for her to be Molly Ringwald,
Right.
because of who she used to be. But you don't see her doing a whole lot
No.
as she's gotten older. It's weird. It's like some people have. I don't know. Like some people get in there and they manage to hang on and stay there, and then they carry their career throughout. It just sort of grows along with them. And then some of them get stunted and get stuck. And then once they grow out of their teens, it's like they grow out of their talent.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens with that, but it's weird. It's like, well, you used to be able to act.
Right.
What happened?
Yes. Well, what's crazy? The thing that I think for me that struck me about Vanessa Hudgens is that I almost kind of feel like 10 years ago or 15 years ago she would have been stuck as Molly Ringwald. That she would have been stuck as Elizabeth Berkley, where it would have been like, okay, once you've you've passed, your show's over. Nobody wants the teen, And I mean, Zac Efron too is considered like, I don't know if we consider him a serious actor, but he's given roles in more serious films that I think you didn't see Mark Paul Gosselaar getting, or Mario Lopez.
Mario Lopez with his I'm going to host the Miss America pageant now.
Yes.
Which honestly, I mean, he's perfect for stuff like that.
He is.
That's exactly where he belongs, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mark Paul had that lawyer TV show.
I think it's
I never
still on.
watched it. Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Family Guy made a joke about it recently, where they were like, they had to keep pointing arrows to tell you which one is. What was it? Something in Bash, right? Franklin and Bash, or something like that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's some name where it's the two names, and they kept pointing arrows to Breckenmeyer and Mark Paul Gosselaar to tell you which one is which when they were talking.
Oh man, it's funny
Yeah.
you should bring up Breckenmeyer, because this past weekend I watched the The Craft, and he has just sort of a peripheral role in that film. But I was like, whatever happened to Breckenmeyer? Because for a while there, I mean, like Road Trip and things like that. Like, he was going really well for a while, and then he just sort of fell off the planet. Another one, DJ Qualls.
Yes. Yeah.
He has shown up now in the new sci-fi / asylum zombie show, Z Nation. And I hadn't seen him in a while, and I was like, what in the hell is DJ Qualls doing in this show?
Yeah.
But playing a military guy, no less, which is kind of weird. But and Tom Everett Scott. Like, holy crap.
I know. Yeah.
Just pulling people out of the woodwork.
Well, that's one thing about like the asylum is that it used to be the only way you could get work as an out of work actor was the Hallmark. Well, it used to not even be Hallmark. It was just Lifetime. The New Guy is a guilty pleasure. I was going to say DJ Qualls and the New Guy, but what was I going to say? Yes, exactly. Yes. That movie. It used to be. I always called those holiday films like the Land of Misfit Actors.
Yeah.
Because you just like it was the same as the Land of Misfit Toys, where it's like the actors that nobody wants anymore. You'd put them in these holiday films. But now the Asylum has come in and said, "Hey, we can get you guys work all year round." Melissa Joan Hart, you can be handcuffed to Mario Lopez here, or you can be eaten by a shark here. Either way, we'll get you some work.
God bless him for that, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes it's fun to watch those movies and pick them out.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we've had that discussion before. Like, watching movies because Debbie Gibson
Right.
and Tiffany are in it together, and you get to watch them roll around in a mud pit.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever.
Exactly. Yes.
Gatoroid versus Spider Car,
Spider.
or whatever,
Yes. With all.
whatever they're doing this week.
Yeah.
Which they seem to have fallen off of. They were.
Yeah. They.
There was a long spate of films with those titles, and now they're not.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
guess.
seem to be doing those that much.
I think it was the one that we covered that might have been the tipping point. They just,
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. They're like, nope.
Yes.
Although Sharknado is pulling in the dough.
Mm-hmm. That's always, yeah. I mean, it's funny, like, with that kind of thing, is that, Beefy Beard said they got a big bulletin board with darts. That's always a good, the Asylum they might, the thing with the Asylum is that they have reached this level where if you tell them that they do something like that, they'll be like, of course, that's how we make our movies. We just throw darts at they'll create a commercial, a web commercial for themselves, showing them that's how they make their movies. But
I mean, they allowed fans to name the sequel
right.
for Sharknado. So I mean, it's like they really just don't care.
No.
They
No.
really just don't give a damn.
Yeah. And what I think might be interesting about what the Asylum has done, kind of to bring back where we are here with this film, but I almost feel like the Asylum has pulled the DTV genre kind of, I don't know, it's sort of, it's skewed, it's kind of pulled the mean so that for actors, like, doing direct-to-video stuff isn't the worst thing ever because you've got this other level of direct-to-video that's the Asylum stuff. So it's like if you're doing, if you're John Cusack or you're Nicolas Cage or even, Travolta or De Niro, you can be like, okay, I'm doing this independent film that's going to end up direct-to-video, but it's an independent film, and you can be like, there's this other level of bad that's the Asylum. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you got the Killing Season and Frozen Ground, and then Gatoroid.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that.
Given the two, I would prefer to be in something like Killing Season, or
Yeah.
they're not as much fun. I mean, generally when you see actors come out in like an Asylum film, they end up making fun of themselves.
Right.
And it usually shows that they have a good sense of humor about where their career is now. But then you think about it too long, and it gets sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this is all you could do?
Yeah, I know. It's like, that was like Sherilyn Fenn. She was in the Bigfoot one. That was
Oh my
a lot of
God.
fun. That one had Bonaducci.
That broke my heart.
This-
They had her packed in
I
sweaters
know,
the
I
entire
know.
time. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, they treated her like she was old and frumpy.
Yes.
And I understand that she's not the Sherilyn Fenn from 30 years ago. I get that. But at the same time, I still think she's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And I felt like they completely just snowed her under
Yeah.
in that film. And it was kind of depressing to me that they just turned her into this that could have been anyone playing her role. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It sort of broke my heart because I really love her. She's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and then she's playing the mom in the Brittany Murphy film. Did you ever see that on Lifetime?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh.
Don't think so.
Oh, the Brittany Murphy Lifetime one. Like Jen and I watched that one. That one is it's I don't want to say it's atrocious, but it's pretty hardcore. It's pretty rough. Like the wigs, they use wigs to show because Brittany Murphy's hair color changed throughout her career. So they would put wigs on her that just look like I don't know, like somebody on TV doesn't want their identity known. It was the acting. It was like because Sherilyn Fenn was Sherilyn Fenn, but then they had a guy play Ashton Kutcher. It was kind of rough. And the part was it was really hard to reconcile that movie with Brittany Murphy's career. Like I had to keep reminding myself, Brittany Murphy was a big deal for a while. You know what I mean? She was She was a major Hollywood, she was a star, I mean, she wasn't major, she wasn't like always leading lady, but she was still a big deal. And I had to keep reminding myself that because the quality of the Lifetime film, wasn't quite there at that level.
Yeah, I have to say I was never a big Brittany Murphy fan. Yeah, I mean she was around a lot, but I never could. I never saw it.
Hmm.
It
But
always seemed drugged out to me.
yeah, well, that's I think that was the problem, was that everybody thought she was drugged out. But I was gonna say, if you're a Sherilyn Fenn fan, um, also probably a little, you're gonna, I don't know if you're gonna feel as sad as you did seeing her in Bigfoot, but you're probably going to, you know, you're gonna rue something, I think.
May not be the whole day.
Right.
You might just rue an hour.
Yeah, we certainly, the two of us both were kind of like, we were watching it, and it was one of those things too where like I had to do grades that night, and I was like, oh, I want to wait, and she's like, really? Jen was like, really, you need to wait? Like, why don't you just go do the grades now? We know what's going to happen in the film. Really, it's just a matter of like how this film botches it or dresses it up or whatever, what happens to Brittany Murphy. But we'd already established that we didn't care for the movie. But it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know if you ever get like that when you're watching a movie where you're like, I started this thing, I'm gonna see it through. I don't care.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I am I'm a completist when it comes to that. Like I feel I don't know. I don't I'm not good at just abandoning something in the middle. However, I am getting better at it. Recently, as in just a few days ago, I started watching Detention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on Netflix. It's a teen horror comedy, but it was so oh, it was terrible. I mean, the dialogue was like Diablo Cody had chewed it up and spit it out. And I can't stand Diablo Cody. I really cannot stand
who is
the
Diablo
dialogue.
Cody? What is Diablo?
She wrote Juno.
Oh no. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes.
And Jennifer's Body. I can't. I just that dialogue just makes me want to vomit.
Yes.
And so
yes.
they were trying so hard. That's what it felt like. To me, is that they were trying so hard to be clever and quippy and Juno-esque.
Yes.
And I'm just like, people don't talk like that. I got 26 minutes into that film and I bailed.
I gotta go. You're like, that's it.
I can't do it. And it's for a show. But
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to show up to my show and I'm going to be like, this movie gets an incomplete because I couldn't sit through the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
It just was that annoying. So I'm getting a little bit better about it. I'm getting to the point where I do this so much and
Yes.
that I give my time so much for these things that I'm getting to the point where I don't have to do this to myself.
Yeah.
You know what? Screw it. I'm not going to torture myself. I'm not going to force myself to sit through something I don't enjoy. So there was a time, even a year ago, when I never would have done that. I would have sat through to the end because I said I was going to watch this movie, and damn it, I'm going to do it. Well, I don't even, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't. I just don't have the time for that.
Well, that's like Ambushed. I just revisited that one. I wrote the blog post for that one recently, and going back
again.
Well, no, I didn't watch it again, but just having to get images. I had to get images for the blog, and
Why did you do that?
just doing that was just like going through to get the images. I was like, oh, and then writing the post too, and starting to write about that main character, and in my head like typing down that he said that's grimy dude, and reminding myself of what that character was. I was like, oh, and I had all these things I wanted to say about the movie, and the next thing I knew, I was like 4 paragraphs deep talking about how much I hated the bait and switch and that character and all of that stuff. And I think that's a movie that I think 20 minutes in, half hour in, realizing where it was going, I probably that's a plug puller right there.
Yeah, I mean sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah.
I did that with. We were covering the August Underground films on Devour. I made it through the first one, and then when I got to the second one, and it was just really more of the same, I'm just like, I'm so bored.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this shit. So I just fast forwarded through the parts where nothing was happening, stopped when it looked like people were talking, and then I don't feel like I missed anything. 'Cause there's really nothing to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am not giving 90 minutes of my life to this.
Yeah.
When it's exactly like the thing I just sat through, there's just more of the same. I'm not doing that again. And so I'm getting kind of grumpy, I guess, in my old age. And just like, God damn it, I don't have much time left, and I'm not giving it to you.
Yeah. I think when um, yeah, I think, especially too, when both of us having done this for a while, how many movies we've seen, oh, Beefy Beard, those people in there talking about. I think that's one thing.
That's a joke at my expense.
Oh, is it? Oh, is it? Oh, have you said that before? Those people in there talking about.
Yeah, that's a Devour joke.
Oh, okay.
Came right out of my head brain.
Oh.
Oh, nice.
Oh, well, that reminds me. We just watched Up in Smoke last night, and I remember he's like, "Who is this? And Lardass, but no, I was gonna say, we've both probably seen. I mean, just for my blog alone, I've done like over 950 posts, and so there have been a couple movies I did twice. I revisited, but I could say just for that blog alone, I've done over 900 movies. And then, for whatever other things that I watch movies for. I have a Tumblr that does other movies that I haven't really updated in a while. But, you think about how many movies you see just for these things alone, and you start to get to you start to see patterns. You start to see writing and directing that you've seen before, and you're like, it's overly indulgent, or it's like you said, the dialogue is overly indulgent. There's something about it where you're just like, I don't stop putting me through this. I don't deserve to go through this again. I don't.
Who do you think you are doing
Yes.
this to me?
Exactly.
Damn it.
Exactly.
Someone, I used to say that as an artist, you don't owe anything to anyone but yourself.
Right.
And I agree with that still.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think if you put something out for public consumption,
Yeah.
and you expect people to sit through it, then I think you kind of owe them some effort.
Yeah.
In return for their troubles.
Yeah.
In return for that time that they're never going to get back.
Right.
And I get angry now when I feel like, because to me that's one of the most egregious things that a filmmaker can do, and it's that when a film clearly has no effort, like there has not a damn has been given.
Yes.
During the production of that film. And that's when I get angry. I
Yeah.
mean, a bad film, but that you can tell that they tried, that's one thing.
Yes.
A cheap film, but that is still good, but just doesn't have a big budget, that's another thing. But a movie where they just didn't give a shit,
Yeah.
that makes me angry, because you knew what you were doing and you put it out there, and then I end up having to watch it for something, and that's my time. And you didn't give a shit. I don't care if you give a shit about what you do with your time.
Right.
But don't then place it in front of me and expect me to be okay with that, because that just makes me angry.
Well, that's
to me, it's ugh.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's with Ambush. The thing that really upset me about Ambush, it's the bait and switch aspect of it. It's that, like you said, with Netflix Instant, we all pay our $8 a month for that. And, with the time that we have in our lives, we can only watch so many movies a month. So, it probably ends up being that each movie costs between, maybe it's $1 a piece, 50 cents. Maybe it's not that much, but it's enough that if you're only going to be able to watch so many movies a month with your Netflix thing, that you want each one to count. And when I go through Ambushed and I look at the synopsis, I look at the trailer, and I see this whole idea of Dolph Lundgren trying to take down dirty cop Randy Couture, and I think that's the movie I'm getting. And the next thing I know, I'm getting this vacuous, insipid, I don't know, obnoxious jackass talking about how he thinks he's so smart and so great, and I get very little of the plot that I was supposed to get. That's also, it's angering. It's like, it's not just even a matter of whether they tried or not. They're putting one over on us. They're totally not selling the film they made because they don't believe in the film they made for whatever reason. And so they're not.
Yeah, they package it as something else because they know that what they actually made isn't going to be palatable.
Yeah.
So they put it in they put it in a different wrapper and try to sell it to you as something else. And yeah, that's knowingly duping me.
Yeah, and that's I think the same way that that they didn't care, which I think is what we got from Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark, was we got a lot of they didn't care in that one.
Yeah, they didn't give a shit.
Yeah, and Ambushed we get more of the,
And there wasn't even a Mecha Shark. It was basically
a submarine.
A submarine with some shark features.
It was the penguin submarine from the movie, but it was a shark instead of a penguin from the Batman
And I'm
movie.
like, come on, it's
Yeah.
not. That's not what. That's no.
Yes.
That's not what you said.
Yes.
That's not at all what you said.
Yes. Now, one thing I want to mention about this movie, The Frozen Ground, that talking about giving an earnest effort or giving a solid effort. One thing I thought about with this movie, because you talked about earlier too about how we kind of have this not an obsession with serial killers, and maybe not even a fascination, but we have a lore to wanting to know because there's that dark element, that the human monster, I think, part of it. Yeah, and this film I thought really good at the end with the end credits where they showed pictures of, they kind of dedicated the film to his victims, and I thought that was a good touch that to kind of let us know that the film wasn't really it wasn't glorifying the serial killer. It wasn't trying to make his story the most important part. They were trying to make the story more about Nicolas Cage and Vanessa Hudgens. What was her? Cindy.
Cindy Paulson.
Cindy Paulson.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention that myself. I thought that was really touching and really nice, and it sort of gave it heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can tell like right away, and this was written and directed by the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was clearly a passion project. It was clearly something that he felt was important that the story get out, and so he made it happen. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like that's the kind of so even if you come away from this and you didn't enjoy it for whatever reason, I don't feel like you can say that he did it out of anything other than wanting to tell this story and with for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And to me that goes a long way.
Yeah, this wasn't a bad slasher film that was loosely based on this character. It wasn't that kind of thing. And I think that's important. I think I think, like you said, it's you knew from watching that. There was another scene in the movie that I thought also kind of touched on that, where Radha Mitchell, who played Nicolas Cage's wife, where she is angry because he brings Vanessa Hudgens home, Cindy Paulson, to his home, and she's like, I don't want that here. And you get that other sense too of the two worlds, right? We live in this world that doesn't involve prostitutes who can be killed by serial killers. We're outside that world. And Radha Mitchell, even though she's married to a cop, he doesn't bring his work home. And so she is saying, no, I don't want to be involved in that. And then later she kind of comes around and realizes, like, no, we need to get this man off the, Bob Hansen off the streets. But I think that too, it's one of those things that I think we as viewers, we also have that sense where we're like, we watch the Murder ID channel, we watch these shows about serial killers, and we're kind of like sit back as in fascination, and sort of they're away from us, they're apart from us in our heads. And I think that was good too, to kind of bring that home, to kind of connect the two worlds.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's a safety there's a we're sitting comfortable in our own living rooms, with no fear of someone bursting through our door or kidnapping us and raping us or holding us prisoner. That's not something that's not a kind of fear that I suffer from on a daily basis. I'm removed from that.
Yeah.
I am in a safe place. And of course anything can happen to anyone anywhere. We know that.
Right.
But at the same time, you know that statistically things are more likely to happen, and in like if you spend your time, if you are a prostitute and you spend your time hanging out in it's like seedy strip clubs and with drug dealers or whatever, I mean, just the chances of something nasty happening to you are a little bit higher than someone who spends their evenings kick back watching reruns of Facts of Life or something. I mean, it's just that's just the way it is. And so yeah, I mean, we're relatively safe where we are, and it is nice though when you can see those two worlds mesh like it did for her. And I think initially this was just a problem and a part of the world that she didn't want her child exposed to. She had no business being exposed to that. She didn't want them to be aware of it. She didn't want that danger element brought into her home. She was being a protective mom and protecting her cub, basically. And I mean, it makes sense. But then the realization that Sandy Paulson was a human being,
Exactly.
I think hit her, and I liked that moment.
Yeah.
Although I did think it was, I didn't really know why he felt it necessary to cast her, because she really wasn't in the film all that much
Right.
to that it required a
I,
known actress.
yeah, maybe she had more scenes that were cut. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe she just wanted to. I don't
Yeah,
know. Maybe
work
it was
opposite
something that was
them.
that she thought was important and she wanted to.
Yeah.
But good on them. I mean, the cast overall, I think, was solid.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're running out of time. We're almost at our 9 o'clock already.
That's okay. There's nothing happening after us.
Oh, there's nothing. Oh, okay.
No.
I didn't know that. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So, no, but I think I think you're right. I think you know that for me, I think it was that idea that for us, we can easily just write off a serial killer as like that dark thing and be fascinated by him. And this movie was saying essentially, maybe we might be disconnected from that world, but these women are people too, and they're important too. And I thought that was a really good message to send in this film.
And I love the fact that Nicolas Cage was on that. I mean, because in the beginning, they're like, oh, they're hookers. It doesn't, they're making that shit up. Nobody's going to believe them. This guy has a stand-up reputation, and he doesn't have a record, and,
Right.
no one's going to believe anything they have to say.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he's like, he's like a pit bull with a bone. He's
Yes.
like, no, damn it.
Yeah.
These women are women. They're people, and they deserve to not be kidnapped and raped and killed.
Exactly.
They deserve to have the chance to live a normal life. And for all those victims who are out there, and at the time he had no idea
How many
people
exactly
had fallen victim to this guy. Not even a clue.
Right.
He hadn't even touched the tip of the iceberg on this dude.
Yeah, the X's, they started to find them.
And I mean, God, and that whole thing. I mean, just his body count is
Yes.
astounding.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah.
And then he ends up not even being prosecuted for all of them.
Yeah, just for 4, and then
just for 4.
and then Sydney's he was prosecuted as well.
And it's like, and at this point, I'm thinking, why bother? Okay, he's got 441 years plus life.
Yeah, and he did
with
just
no
die.
chance of parole. Basically, he's never getting out.
Right.
And so, what good does it do him to only get prosecuted for 4? You may as well just pile them all on. Who
Exactly.
cares?
Exactly. Well, I guess it was part of his
except maybe
agreement. I guess that was part of his plea to go and
It was, but why?
find. I know.
mean, why? Why? What difference does it make? What good is it going to do you? You're not getting out of prison regardless, so you may as
Yeah.
well just let them prosecute for all of them, unless, of course, because he did mention attempting to talk them into reinstating the death penalty.
Right. Yes,
So
that could be.
maybe that would have been on the table if he was being convicted of killing 17 women.
Exactly.
Maybe at that point it would have brought the death penalty back into play. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. That's.
if not, then it's just like, who cares? Whether you get 400 years or 700 years
Yeah.
or 17,000 years, at that point it really doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. I agree. I mean, maybe it was just a time thing too, like they just want to, but I think for the victims, that getting the closure of knowing that that's, boom, that's one that,
But then I feel bad for the ones who, and this is why it bothers me, because you have these 4 women who he did get convicted for,
Right.
and now it's like it's known, it's in the record books. Yes, this guy did it. This is why my life was over. I mattered.
Yes.
I was important. And then you have the other ones who are just like, well, they were killed too, but
Yes.
whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know.
I know. I guess.
And it's just, I don't feel like they really do get the same amount of closure.
Well, now they've got the movie, I guess, which is good because
and I think that's probably why it was made.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I guess what we're both saying is this is a thumbs up. This is we can't say thumbs up. I think that's copywritten, but we're both
Is it
saying.
really?
I think so. Yes, I think they have. Siskel and Ebert had. Yeah, but we're both saying check this one out. It's worth seeing, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, we're on.
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean it's a compelling drama, and I think it really does play at your heartstrings some. And when you just start, I really like the parts where we see what goes on from the victim's point of view, and it just sort of adds a little bit of horror to it. I mean, not as in horror film, but as in just you feel the horror that they felt, and I think it was handled very well.
Yeah, I agree.
With sensitivity.
Sensitivity.
At the same time, it was exciting and interesting, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it had everything, and I mean these actors that you're seeing in here. Nicolas Cage is not a joke in this. John Cusack is good. Vanessa Hudgens was good. I think everybody in the cast did a good job. I thought it was everything about the film worked for me.
I agree. I totally agree.
Excellent. Well, let's. We have a little extra time here, I guess, so we'll go a little bit over. I don't want to go too far over just because I haven't eaten today, so I need to get myself some dinner in a bit. But Jamie, what have you been working on? What projects do you have going on right now?
Well, just last night I did the latest episode of the Insomniacs playlist where I did all novelty songs.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I get that posted, it will be available for download from legionpodcasts.com. And other than that, still working on our Friday the 13th retrospective. We just recorded part 3, and we're going to be recording part 4 next week for Devour the Podcast. I'm in the middle of doing a Phantasm retrospective for Graveshift Radio. And we just did Abbott and Costello meets the entire Universal universe, horror, like all the Universal monsters. We did all 5 of those films.
Oh, nice.
For the Skeleton Crew. That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
That show should be coming out very soon. And tonight I'm going to be recording the next episode of Evil Episodes, where they're going to be talking about The Dead 2, along with our usual TV wrap-up of all the things that are going on in horror television right now. And I don't know if I've hit them all, but I think that's pretty much it.
That sounds good. I mean, you always have plenty of podcasting going on.
I am never not podcasting. I actually had a listener from the UK contacted me last night,
mm-hmm.
and he said he's a field archaeologist who works in the UK. And so basically he's like, I've got a lot of time on my hands where I'm just digging in the dirt. And I have started listening to horror podcasts. He's like, I have started listening to Horrorphilia, the podcast from Horrorphilia Network, and also from Legion Podcast Network. And he's like, the one thing that I find to be common ground among a lot of these shows is you.
Yes.
So either you don't sleep or you don't have a day job.
Right.
I said, well, no, I actually do have a day job, and no, I don't sleep.
I don't sleep. That's what it is. It's the sleeping.
Right. He's like, I just don't see how it's humanly possible for you to do as much as you do. Like,
yeah.
Honestly, I don't either.
I know. I do one, and it's plenty.
I know, and then you're like, 90 minutes?
I know.
What's this hour 45?
I know. A movie, yes, if the movie's too long. Now, the other thing is, for me, I just posted Ambushed. I finally reviewed that one. I'm hoping to get a review up for next week. I'm hoping to kind of get regularly at least one review a week. I might take a break from films that we've done. I might do one that I've had that I've been meaning to do for a while, Blood of Heroes, which is one I did for the Drunk on VHS podcast months ago. Probably like just before we started this podcast here. So that's one I've been meaning to do. It's got Rutger Hauer, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Delroy Lindo. So that one I've been
eating my sesame cake.
Yes.
That's the extent of my Delroy Lindo.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do you know what that's from?
No.
No, it's from Congo.
I was going to say he was great in Crooklyn. He was great as the dad in Crooklyn, but yeah. So that's what I've got going on. I also want to say before we wrap up the podcast to my lovely wife, who's actually in the kitchen cooking dinner. But she is sick, so I want to tell her I love you, and I hope you feel better soon, baby.
I hope she feels better soon, too.
Thank you. She just yelled out, I love you, honey, too. But that's it for tonight's podcast. So thank you all for listening, and hope to see you all next week. And we'll have something fun for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, sadly, there will be John Cross won't be doing Crosstalk or his music show tonight.
Okay. Do we have wrestling?
I don't know. I don't know if anything else is coming up other than those. I was unable to find out in time.
Okay.
But so I guess people can hang out on the Second Unit Broadcast
Yeah.
Network and just see if somebody suddenly starts talking.
Right.
Then you know that there's another show.
That's right. Keep your browser open and see what happens. All right. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Thank you again.
You see it every day. The first dollar you earned from your first customer. Now it hangs on your wall at headquarters. A reminder of where you started and the promise of what's still to come. In part because you rely on Sandy Spring Bank to help you make the right choices on real estate and equipment loans, treasury management, and commercial services. We believe real banking is a conversation. Let's talk about your business. Visit sandyspringbank.com/business. Credit products offered by Sandy Spring Bank.